my music is written for the dancing. So I'm usually trying to get it to a point where I want to move my body. I'll usually stack it out, build it out. I like to use this saying, write drunk, edit sober. And so I'm just throwing stuff at it. I guess you could say throwing wet noodles at the wall. just writing, but not being critical of it, not really thinking too hard, not really like
analyzing it.
Yeah, I feel like as a producer, there's so many hats that you have to wear, and you have to constantly be changing those hats and knowing where you're sitting.
You're listening to the Freio Music Podcast.
To the Freio Music
Podcast.
I am Zachary Newman. My stage name is Akriza, and I am currently based out of Nevada City, California, originally from Portland, Oregon.
What initially got you into music? What was some of those foundational moments for you early on?
I never really fit in growing up with the cool kids or whoever in school. Didn't really fit in with sports or anything like that. And my mom had this intuitive knowing to get me a piano for my birthday one year. And getting that piano was kind of the first moment that I really fell in love with something. And I started teaching myself different songs. So like Legend of Zelda, video game music, and like different classical pieces like Für Elise. And my mom had kind of discovered this talent of teaching myself music by ear, and she promptly put me into music lessons. And from there, I had a pretty tragic experience. I completely broke my arm at summer camp, and complete lost movement in my hand.
Playing music or doing something else?
No, it was like a basketball summer camp.
Okay.
It wasn't, I don't know why she put me in a sports summer camp. It was the last thing I wanted to do, but the first night I was there, I was on the top bunk, and I never slept in a bunk bed before, and I rolled right off the bunk bed and shattered my elbow. Pretty dramatic experience, it was in the middle of the night, and one of the counselors found me and took me to the nurse, and the nurse drove me to the hospital, and I remember kind of blacking in and out in the back of the car, and having to have surgery. And then I was actually in the hospital for like a week because I couldn't keep down food. And the doctor had said it was one of the worst fractures he'd ever seen. Completely lost movement in my hand. And
wow.
But I still had piano. I still was taking piano lessons, even though I only had one hand to play piano. And my I guess the light at the end of the tunnel for me to get my hand moving again was to play piano. So a year of physical therapy later, I remember I was sitting watching cartoons or something. I was like 7 or 8, and I was doing some hand exercises that the therapist had taught me, and there was just this pop, and my hand was working again. And I remember being so excited, and I told my mom, and my grandma had always listened to me play piano, and so she kept listening to play piano until she passed away. Not too long after, maybe within the year, she had passed away, and she was kind of like my second mom. So I wrote my first song ever for her funeral, and I played it at her funeral, and it was, she was very well loved. There was hundreds of people there, and that moment of
that's amazing,
of the applause and the standing ovation, and just receiving that really moved me to know that I could move people through music. And so that in that moment, I had dedicated my life to music. That was I had decided that was my passion and my.
That's deep. And how old were you?
Yeah, so I guess I got into piano in middle school, probably like third grade or something. And then I feel like when I had broken my arm, I was 7 or 8, and then wrote my first song maybe when I was 9 or 10. My grandma passed away.
And then that moment when you dedicated, you were 9 or 10, you said?
Yeah.
Wow. So that's pretty early knowing your path. So tell me about, some of the major forks in the road, later in life that may have been, challenging at the moment, but ultimately help set you up for success.
Sure. I think the next piece of that story, my parents were always supportive, and they had, for Christmas one year, they got me, I don't know if you're familiar with Tools. It was the first, before it was Pro Tools, it was DigiDesign. So I had Avid DigiDesign. I had one of the first audio interfaces that they had made. And at first I was so confused. I didn't know really what it was or what I could do with it. But when I plugged it in and turned it on and installed everything, I realized what I could do. And so I ended up getting my hands on as many instruments as I could: microphones, pianos, guitar. I taught myself guitar, home bass. I got an electric guitar from my friend, and I just wrote. I wrote mostly singer-songwriter stuff. So I was really inspired by Conor Oberst, because and he's not necessarily the most amazing singer, but his poetry and musical creative ability always inspired me, because I never felt like I was a great singer. And so discovering his music had really inspired me to write. And so I had been recording and writing, and I found out about Bandcamp, and I started releasing stuff on Bandcamp in 2010 was when I started releasing tracks on Bandcamp. There's a hidden Bandcamp somewhere that has my singer-songwriter stuff from way back in the day. It's kind of funny to listen to. Not necessarily something I want to share with the world, but
it's the closet, but public.
It's out there. But
that's good.
Yeah, and then from there, I remember around the same time, 2010, 2011, I had heard, I forget what the song is, but that's by Scream. It's the Midnight Request Line, I think is what it's called. It's one of those old, when dubstep was, before it kind of turned into what it is today, that deep dub, super bassy, wubby music. That was my first, I guess, raw into electronic music. It was I heard this friend was playing this for me with their little sound system, and I was like, what is this? This is incredible. So I got on Fruity Loops, and I figured out how to use LFOs and how to make dubstep bass lines, and from there I started to work mostly in electronic music, because I think growing up in Portland, I realized that being a singer-songwriter was probably going to be really challenging to go anywhere with it, because it was pretty saturated in Portland. And I also really fell in love with electronic music. And so from there, a friend of mine kept bugging me to get into Ableton, and I got into Ableton, and that's kind of where I am today.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's a really quick summary there. So I'm wondering though, when you first got onto Fruity Loops and you said that you discovered how to make LFOs and how to shape and wobble, chomp up sound in a way that sounded maybe closer to the sounds that you were gravitating towards, or the dubstep. What were some of the big breakthroughs early on in maybe Fruity Loops or any of those other programs that were kind of like mind expanding or sound expanding besides the LFOs, or if you could dig into that a little bit further?
That's a good question. I mean, I guess getting into Ableton was the biggest up level for me. And then learning, I got into Massive and taught myself Massive. That's how I learned sound design. But yeah, I went to Clackamas Community College, where I had studied music production, and that was helpful and inspiring. But yeah, I guess earlier on, just that transition to Ableton was the biggest game changer for me.
And what was it about Ableton that unlocked creativity or new insights?
Yeah, I think it's just the way it's all laid out. I actually started using Ableton to do more it's Ableton Live. You can do a bunch of live looping and performance, like FKJ does a lot of that. And I got really deep into that world because I play piano, other instruments, and guitar. I actually started a project called Wild Kingdom, which was my first official electronic project, and we would I had a guitar player and I played the keys, and I would switch between samples and plugins and presets, and my buddy Zach would play guitar. Funny, Zach and Zachary, and we played some cool shows. Like we played at the Crystal Ballroom in Portland, which is just an epic venue, and a couple things like that. But I think that.
Now, does the floor actually move in that venue?
Yes,
or is that just me?
It actually bounces.
It actually bounces.
Yeah, I think they have it on springs or something.
On springs?
Actually, on springs. Yeah. I'd have to look that up, but I'm pretty sure that's what I've heard. And I've been in that venue when the whole floor has literally shook.
Yeah, it's strange because it's elevated too. It's not ground level.
No.
And you're in this building and it's moving. And it's like, whoa.
It's like the fourth story. Something of this building.
Yeah.
And for anyone who doesn't know, McMinimans is incredible if you're ever in Portland or Washington. They take these old historic buildings and convert them into venues and breweries. And Edgefield in Portland is super sick. Crystal Ballroom's an amazing venue. So check it out.
Nice. So that's interesting that kind of set Ableton kind of launched you in a new trajectory and kind of unlocked the live elements of the music for you. Given that you started exploring sound, you unlocked Ableton, the live elements of performing. How did Akriza come about, the name and the brand itself?
Yeah, so I had dreamed of getting away from Portland for a while and starting my own project. And when you're tied up in a place, it can be challenging to cut all of your ties and get up and leave. But I had successfully managed to close all of the loops and doors that I had in Portland, and ended up moving out of Portland. I had found out about Nevada City. It's kind of on the way to Burning Man, and my first couple times going to Burning Man, I stopped in and out of Nevada City, and it's a pretty cool culture out here. But it's in the woods, and it's just a nice place. It's got beautiful the wild scenic river, the river out here, what I really love. And I just kind of fell in love with being in nature and away from the city. And I ended up moving here in 2020. It was January of 2020. And I had been, I guess, asking or hoping for a retreat in nature, in the woods, away from society. I kind of hoped for society to stop so I could just really dive into this project that wanted to be birthed. And it happened in February. The whole world shut down. And so I was in this place that I was subletting in a stranger's home, basically, and set up my recording studio. And it started to snow, and I was basically just indoors, and I wrote, and that's actually I wrote my first song, 1111. Was the first track that I wrote as Akriza. And then I continued to write. I wrote all of my first album, Ecstatic Motion. And I think, the hardest part about starting something is finishing and releasing it. And so I found High Vibe Records. My buddy was just starting it. And he took on the album. We released it together, and that was the birth of Akriza.
That's amazing. Well, it's so interesting how sometimes things align so, spontaneously, or things set up. But you were able to jump on the opportunity, which is the world shutting down, and you were in the right place. You had already kind of set the stage for yourself to be in the right environment, and then you seem to take advantage of that. So given that you moved to a new place right before lockdowns, were you just like super isolated, didn't know people in town, or did you have do you have some connections, or is it just you and the stranger you're subletting from in nature?
Yeah, well, fortunately I moved here where I am now to before everything shut down permanently. So I actually met one of my now best friends who goes by the Red Hatter out here, and we kind of did lockdown together, and we're inspiring each other in this portal just to write. And I had a couple friends out here just from having come in and out of town. But a lot of people took off. A lot of people went to Costa Rica, or they were already in Costa Rica. Because a lot of the people who come here are travelers, or kind of going around the world. So a lot of friends actually got stuck out of the country. But it was me and my now best friend, and we kind of hung out and just wrote together, and both started. I guess we kind of more or less birthed our projects in this portal that we were in.
That's great. Well, let's talk about that first song, 1111. Curious, what is behind the title, and if you could tell me a little bit more about how that song came to be.
Yeah, so obviously 1111 is a time of day that happens twice, and I love I guess when I just feel like my life is synced up. I don't know if you've ever read The Alchemist. There's the story of
Yes, I have.
omens, and I guess 11:11 feels kind of like this. It's a synchronistic moment in time that happens twice, and for a long time I was always seeing 11:11 in the morning and 11:11 in the evening every day, just looking at my phone and it's 11:11. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the 11:11 Make-A-Wish. It's kind of like a funny thing that I started doing. But I just, synchronicities and timing and omens are, I love kind of playing with that and following my life based on what comes up and the synchronicities that happen. And so 11:11, it's just, for me, going back to even how I got stuck in Nevada City and was in the woods by myself and fully unintentionally, but that was the birthing of my project. It's one of those synchronicities, of life. It's like a blessing in disguise, and I was really trying to find my sound, and it's one of those songs that I was really inspired by a couple artists that I was listening to at the time, and I had just found a really awesome vocal sample library, and I was just playing and found these vocal samples and started chopping it up, and
Now, are you willing to share that sample library, or is that like the secret sauce?
I could be down. It's our Output Arcade. I use actually our arcade in quite a few of my songs. They have these really big, beautiful vocal libraries, and they're always updating them too. So it's a cool plugin. It's kind of it can take up a lot of computer resources though. So anybody who is using it, I'd recommend. I always freeze and flatten everything into an audio file and then work from there. And
how does it come normally? It's not in an audio file?
So it's a plugin. It's actually a plugin.
Yeah.
That you can open in your DAW, and then there's...
Oh, so you record the sample from the plugin into an audio file, and then you kind of get rid of the plugin from the project.
Because I see. And then it allows me to take so I only have one instance of it. So if I want to go to a different library or go find some other samples from Arcade, I can do that without having to.
Gotcha.
Because for whatever reason, if I put 2 or 3 of those in a project, it just it just starts
grinds to a halt,
to bog it down, and it's not. It's just so not fun to work in a project that's moving slow. So.
Oh, that's a great workaround and makes a lot of sense. So I derailed you a little bit, but you mentioned that plugin in passing when you were talking about adding in vocal samples into that album or that track. So I thought I derailed you, but
oh no, from just 11:11. No, not really. No, it's it was just my first track in a row, and it's it's crazy because my buddy who runs Living Prism was actually a really amazing production company based out of Portland, and has a really great SoundCloud page. He did the premiere of that song, so I released on his SoundCloud, on the Living Prism SoundCloud, and then it released as my first single on High Vibe, and I was the first artist on High Vibe. And so I think through that combination of things, it's become my It's crazy. It's the first song I ever released. It's become my most played song, almost 500,000, which is just bonkers to me.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love the way you phrased it earlier, that the synchronicities and the omens, you're trying to follow those and aligning. You got a buddy, who's starting up a record company. You just moved to a new city. You got, collaborators living nearby. That's amazing. So I'm curious though, when you kind of are self-reflective on it and following the omens and the signals and synchronicities, I imagine that not everything that comes your way is positive. So how do you filter out the things that you don't want to focus on and filter in the energy and the synchronicities that you're looking for?
That's a really good question. Gosh, I guess so. Something that I like to say is that you can either choose to look at everything in the world as happening for you or against you. And so as soon as you start to look at the world as either acting in your favor, something might go wrong. I could have moved to this city and fallen apart,
all the negativity,
and I'd fallen into all of the drama of the world, or I could have seen the light and the positive in the situation and use it towards my advantage. And so I'm always looking for those moments, because it's easy to get potentially triggered or upset, or so there's so many times in my life where there's been this one moment that this thing has happened and I could have chosen to be upset at it, or notice it as a redirection. I like to say that it's spirit redirecting to something better. It can be hard to see everything from this lens of like win-win. Like, this is a win-win-win-win, for everybody, actually, if you look at it through a certain lens. And I like to, I love the saying that the dharma of the world is not my dharma, or the drama of the world is not my drama, but what's most important is living out your dharma, which is your higher purpose. And so I'm always looking for, like, to stay out of that and not get triggered, and just focus on the light and the positive things.
Yeah, I like the way that you phrase that life could be happening for you, to your benefit, or against you, and it's up to you to decide the external, how the external world is impacting you.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting, and I feel like very insightful. So given that you have, aligned with the things that you have, how did you decide Akriza, the name itself?
Oh, yeah.
And, some of the colors and I feel like you're bringing up some spiritual teachings as well when you're mentioning Dharma. And I'm curious how that may impact or influence your music and art.
Yeah. So I'll just talk about the name Akriza. Akriza comes from my name, Zachary. It's just a play on my name. So I love, have you ever heard of spoonerisms?
No.
It's where you'll take two words and flip the first letter of each.
Yeah.
So
I feel like there's a bunch of artists that have that in their name, like Calm Trues or whatever.
Right. Yeah. So I love, like, plays on words, and Akriza actually, so Pig Latin too is another funny word play. If you say Zachary in Latin, it's Akriza, and Akriza just kind of shortened and turned into something that sounds more pleasing in my ears, Akriza. And so
nice.
That's essentially it's just a play on my name. But yeah, I think that, my getting into more of the like spiritual side of my project, like art and creativity, I believe is inherently spiritual. The process is so like aligning your internal and external environments and diving into what wants to come through. And I think that it can be challenging as an artist to, I guess, especially if you don't have like an intention with your creativity, it can be challenging to create and then to share, and then especially as like a musician, to be on stage and in the spotlight. And I struggled a lot with why am I doing this? Is this just an ego-based thing? Am I just doing this for like, where does it come from? And if you don't have that intention, it can be kind of hard. But I had come to the conclusion that the reason I create is to inherently to inspire others. It's to move other people, to inspire them to feel emotions, to dance, to get out of their mind, to get into their bodies, to get in their heart, to get into their feelings. And I put, I guess you could say, prayers into my music. It's with the intention of inspiring others to, I want to live my creative purpose and live my creative mission so that I can inspire other people to hopefully to do the same, to live in from that base. And then also I think it goes even deeper too with like electronic music. There's a lot of electronic music that I think really lacks like live element. And so for me, it's this marriage of it's duality. It's balance. It's a marriage of the electronic and also the organic. And I pull a lot from different cultures from around the world, and especially like Indian and this kind of thing. And it's, to me, it's a spiritual process, and it's with that intention of like sending out that prayer.
When you're creating music, you mentioned organic, and I will venture to say that you're referring to sounds that are like instruments or audio in nature that have been recorded, yeah, and that are not generated from in the computer from an origin point of view. Is that accurate?
Yeah, like I love to put each track in a space. I like to start it with maybe.
Tell me about that. What is a space?
So
what do you mean?
Maybe
put
it's
it in a space
outside and it's raining and there's thunder happening and it's this like dark and stormy, rainy. So you'll hear in the intro there's like rain
and so is that one of your first layers in the track when you're building it? That the thunder and the rain.
I mean, it's not the first layer that I'll put in. It's usually at the end of a track. I'll figure out what set and setting I want the track to be in. But I love to create this feeling that you're somewhere, not just in the song. That there's birds or there's nature sounds. There's creeks or rivers or yeah, like birds and like the rain.
So
and
once
thunder.
you created that space, what comes next in that creative process?
Gosh, I'll usually start with some kind of an idea. It's like something that's inspired me, like a song or a melody in my head, or maybe I'll find a really beautiful instrument that I love. Like, for instance, I love the Turkish Ney. I think it's an incredibly beautiful and kind of eerie sound. And
will you spell that one? Ney?
Ney.
Ney. Okay, thanks. I'll have to look that up.
A beautiful instrument, and I love incorporating that in particular, or like flutes or a sitar, or I play on the piano, but I'll bring in like a guzheng and like sample a note and then play it on the piano. And usually I'll start there with something there's some inspiration, and so I'll take that and I'll start writing a groove. I'll find a tempo, start writing a beat, and kind of bring in the percussion, and then I'll go to my piano and figure out some chords that I like and start writing a bass line. And from there it just kind of organically starts to come together. It's a process of I'm always thinking of like, okay, where can this go in my set, or how is this going to be received on a dance floor, or where would I be playing this in particular? Because the whole point is I want to play it out, I want to share it with people, and so with keeping that in mind, I'm starting to build the track out, and it's such a fun process to see how it wants to evolve and how it wants to come about. But I know it's good when I'm dancing, if I want to get up and move to it, or I want to move my body. I think that's the key for me, because the whole point of my music is to make people dance. I love where I live because of the ecstatic dance community and the people. We have a lot of dancers out here, and I love to dance. It's one of my favorite things to do. And so my music is written for the dancing. And so I'm usually trying to get it to a point where I want to move my body, and I'll usually stack it out, build it out. I like to use this saying, write drunk, edit sober. And so I'm just throwing stuff at it. I guess you could say throwing wet noodles at the wall. just writing, but not being critical of it, not really thinking too hard, not really like, because
analyzing it.
Yeah, I feel like as a producer, there's so many hats that you have to wear, and you have to constantly be changing those hats and knowing where you're sitting, especially for someone like me, who I'm not only doing all the creating, but I'm doing all the mixing and mastering, and then all the distribution. And these are all different hats. So in the creative process, it's the first hat is the writing drunk almost. It's that, like, writing, for me it's just putting as much into it as I can, and just throwing stuff at it, like, oh, this sounds good, or I'll hear something in my mind, or something in my ear. It's like, oh, this is the next thing that needs to happen, or this is the next element of the song that needs to come in. And then at a certain point in the song, it kind of gets a little busy, or it's, kind of pieced together. I'll switch hats, and this is to my more critical mind, my editing mind. Something that little tidbit that I learned is that we only have so much ability to make decisions during one day. So if you're making decisions, you'll get to a burnout point. And so so going into a music project, maybe after a full day where you've been making a lot of decisions, it's not really a great idea to start making more decisions. Like that hat of like the editor,
the quality of your decisions is going to decrease.
Critical mind. Yeah. So it's honestly better to turn that brain off and go into a creative brain. So maybe it's a good time to like play around with the piano and just like see what comes through creatively, and go more into that creative, like quote unquote right drunk kind of brain where you're just, versus when you're earlier in the day or fresher in the day, you're able to make these, like, because you have to make decisions. You have to cut this out, cut that out, put this here, put that there, arrange it this way, arrange it that way, how loud it's going to be, how quiet it's going to be, where it's going to sit in the mix, all these like really particular decisions to make a song sound, good in its final form. But yeah, I'm switching between these hats in the creative process, and then there's another hat even for the mixing process. I have to step back from the song, and really turn off my creative brain or the brain of the artist and look at it from a completely fresh perspective of, a mix engineer, like because as the artist, you might be like, I really like both of these sounds, but as the mix engineer, you might be like, actually, only one of those really works, and maybe they can go together, but you really have to decide which one's going to be the focal point. And so then mixing, and then I'll switch hats again and go into a mastering engineer and be like, okay, well, how is this going to sound, like I don't know, as in the creative process, I don't want to be listening on headphones and then on my reference speakers and going into my car and listening in my car and doing that whole thing. That's kind of more of like the mix engineer, it's like, I just want to like have the sound bumping and just write and not really care about these, finer details.
And when you say right drunk, is this a metaphor, just to be explicit with anybody listening?
It's a metaphor. Like, I mean,
yes,
I don't.
I hear what you're saying.
If you want to use substances to write, like, go for it. But not explicitly.
I get what you're saying.
You don't need them.
You're just tossing out ideas.
Yeah.
So when you're in that creative flow, when you're quote writing drunk, I assume that you want to have a space in which you have all your instruments available, everything's already plugged in, the project's running, you're like ready to go. So there's very few decisions that need to be made in that creative frame of mind. Is that fair? Yeah,
I think it's super important to have your environment set up. Like, environments are everything, internal and external. I can't come to a project if I haven't worked through my own internal stuff. If I'm like working through something, I have to I could sit on the piano and use it as a tool to like a cathartic tool to relieve myself of emotion, negative or positive. But I think dialing that, space within, and then coming into your creative, it's like a sanctuary, it's like a temple for me. It's this place of like everything I like to keep it clean, and really nice, and at the end of the day or throughout the day, make sure it's tidied up so that when I walk in there, it's not like a disaster, and then everything's set up, everything's always plugged in and ready to go. I got piano is really easy to access. My all of my pieces of gear are all really easy to plug in and turn on, and
And I found it interesting that you said when you're in the creative flow and you're kind of coming up with ideas on the piano or thinking through melodies, it seemed like you just differentiated that or separated it from decision making, even though your fingers are moving and but it's like that's not a tax on your decision fatigue.
Sure, I wouldn't say it is so much. I think if you're like, for instance, if you're writing a song on the piano and writing lyrics and making decisions, like, because there's a, like, think about it this way, there's a moment, like, you could just free write, you know, if I were to tell you sit down and just write whatever comes to your brain, you know, but without thinking about it. Like, don't edit it, don't be an editor, just brain dump. Like, you're making decisions, but it's different than, you know, if you then go back to it as an editor and, oh, that's wordy, that's verbose, that's too many words, that's too much going on, like that sentence is redundant, you know, or this isn't where I want this to go, and then you start deciding the flow of whatever it is you're writing. And same with the piano, like I can just sit down and turn my brain off and just play, you know. So I'm sure I have to.
And yeah, I'm just wondering, like, when you say turn your brain off and just play, it's like such a beautiful state of mind. So I'm curious if there's any words that could describe that blankness or that emptiness as you are freeform.
Yeah, I always refer to it as a flow state, honestly. Like when you can tap in, like there's this, there's a couple hot springs that I really love that have these beautiful upright pianos in them. And this goes back to that environment piece, you know, I like to think that all instruments have a soul, especially these like old pianos, like thinking of all of the people that I've ever like put their energy into this instrument that's just sitting. I love to think that that's part of the soul of the piano. And so like there's this moment where you sit down, the mood's just right, just maybe a couple people in the room, maybe it's just you, maybe I'm in my studio, I lit some incense or whatever it is, you know, the environment's great, and you just sit down and like you don't even think about your key, you don't even think about what you're gonna play, you don't even think about anything. It's just whatever kind of comes to you and is spoken to you from that instrument, you know, especially these old pianos, you know, like Brighton Bush in Oregon, for instance, has a really beautiful piano in their lobby that I love to play. And Sierraville Hot Springs, kind of up where I live, there's a beautiful piano there, and I love the sound of these instruments and the feel of these instruments. And yeah, it's just like kind of putting yourself in this like more ethereal, less like logical, I guess. It's the like left and right brain, you know. I don't know how to explain it other than that. It's just this, and then it's a flow state. It's just from there, it's just like trusting, you know, like not really being too critical, not really like, you know, I'm not like, yeah, it's like any improvisational artist would kind of be able to explain, like there's a state you get in when you're just playing and it just feels super good and everything's inspiring to you and you barely remember what you played like 5 minutes ago. You're just playing.
And so when you're in that state of flow and you're just playing, do you always just hit record and then just start, you know, thinking through it on the piano?
Not always. No, sometimes I just play and it's just that moment. That's it. It's gone forever. I'll never, you know, maybe I'll remember a piece of it here or there and be like, oh, that was really powerful and I want to reuse that, and it'll loop through my head. I'll hear it over and over again until I like write it down and create it and make a song out of it. But the cool thing about Ableton, so when I'm sitting in the studio on Ableton, they have a MIDI capture feature. I think it came out in Ableton 10 or something, where if you have a track record enabled and you're playing something, you know, so like I have a drum beat going, I press play, and then I have my track record enabled, so it's when I play my piano, that sample is playing. You don't have to actually record, which is incredible, because as soon, if for whatever reason there's this like mental block whenever I hit record, where it's under pressure now all of a sudden, and I have to like do the right thing and hit it just right, and yeah. I'll get to a point where I overthink it and I have to step away. Like you know, taking breaks is great actually when you get to that frustrated point, but But the MIDI capture, I find always my best takes are just offline. Like when I'm not, just not recording. Like when I'm not in that zone of feeling the pressure from having to actually press record and record it. And so that's a super cool feature in Ableton that I use a lot because, yeah. Before
so
that,
Ableton's just kind of auto recording you,
yeah,
and then you have to hit, and then you can go back and find it if there was like an element of genius in there.
yeah. You have to. I think you have to. It's pretty much as long as when you start playing to when you stop playing, and then you can press the MIDI capture. But because MIDI information's it's so lightweight to just
super light.
Always,
yeah.
It's it's
that's cool.
An amazing feature. I love that about Ableton.
So that's good. That's a good one. That's the first I've heard of that in all these podcasts. So that's good.
Yeah, I show people it all the time. I'm like, hey, did you know about this? I'm like, what? No, it's amazing. It's up there at the top, kind of by where record and play are. There's a little box, and you can just click that after you've played something, and it'll grab the whole thing.
That's great. And I could certainly relate to, as soon as you hit that R button, at least for me, hit record. And you're suddenly now you're thinking a little bit harder. You had to hit it just right.
Yeah.
You're not like as loose as you were before you hit that record button. So
yeah,
I know what you mean, and that's great that Ableton came out with a tool for you. So
yeah, it's great. Makes life
there's
easier.
a couple other songs that I'd love to touch on if we have time, and one is Atlan Magica.
Yeah,
I'm saying that right?
Magica. Yeah.
Atlan.
Yeah.
So first of all, where were you when you created that one? And tell me a little bit of, the inspiration behind it.
Yeah, so I took a little Central America, actually. Being in new places is some of the most inspiring for me, at least, like traveling and seeing nature and seeing different places in the world. And like Atitlan is in Guatemala, and it's a really beautiful place, really incredible place to be. And I had spent some time there, and when I travel, I bring my laptop and some headphones and a small MIDI keyboard. And I actually had just met someone while traveling who's now a really good friend of mine, and we just like sat down in he had this like really beautiful house he was staying in, and we just set up my computer, and he had a little JBL speaker. Using Bluetooth sucks for doing any kind of producing. Don't use Bluetooth, but fortunately he had an audio jack, so we plugged in the audio jack, and
less delay.
It's actually producing on one of those actually really cool because you can get the mix pretty good until you need to go to headphones or go to like actual speakers. And I brought my Odyssey headphones with me, which are incredible headphones, and so referencing those was great. But then I had everything back to the studio and did all the fine touch. But we were just in the studio, and I was kind of showing him my creative process, And he's a musician, but not really a producer like, the stuff that I make. He's more like singer-songwriter. And we just sat down, and it's fun just sitting with someone, who isn't necessarily a producer, but like has an ear for music. And I was just kind of going through stuff and finding samples, and just at some point he's like, the flute. And so we took this like Native American flute tone, and we started writing. That's where that song came from.
Nice. Well, what is it about collaborating or working with somebody that is advantageous to the outcome of the song? Because you've mentioned already a couple collaborations and different people that you enjoy, the creative process and working alongside somebody.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if maybe there's any insight you have there.
Yeah. I mean, so when I'm sitting with a producer in the studio, versus when I'm sitting with just someone who's like a friend or who just has an ear for music, it's a different kind of approach. But I think just having someone sitting nearby is fun because I feel like their energy comes into the creative process. It's not all of a sudden it's not my own anymore. It's me and someone else who are kind of birthing this thing together. And but when I'm with a producer in the studio, I actually love to set a 15-minute timer.
Oh,
and so
nice.
I'll sit. I was just doing this yesterday with a friend, Iris, and we wrote a cool track. But I set a 15-minute timer, and I'll just go for 15 minutes and just write. And then when the timer's up, finish your idea quick and get out of the chair and start another 15-minute timer, and the other person goes. And doing this over the course of a couple hours, it's like 20 minutes is the other person is kind of like, okay, I'm like ready. 10 minutes is just like too long, short. Yeah. You can't really get anything done in 10 minutes, but 15 minutes is that like sweet spot where and at a certain point in it, it's like, oh, try this or try that, or oh, do you mind? I'm going to go a little bit longer because I need to record this guitar part or whatever. Like, but starting out and doing 15, it's 15, it's like, it just keeps the momentum going and the energy going, and it's like, it's perfect because you don't think too hard. It's that coming back to that place of like, right drunk at its sober. It's like when you're on the clock and you can't really like, think too hard about it, and you just go. It's a really cool place to write. So I like to do that. But yeah, writing with friends is so cool because you learn so much. I feel like I'm always learning so much from other producers, that I get to sit down with.
Well, that's a great hack, that 15-minute timer, get everybody's ideas out on the project in a short order.
Yeah.
And then, while you get to step back, you also gain distance, probably physically and also mentally, from the individual layers and the stems, and kind of hear the mix a little bit differently when somebody else is in the weeds. That's a great hack there. Appreciate that. So another track, to call. I'm saying that one right, hopefully.
Tikal.
So, Tikal. Tell me about that one. Where were you based out of when you created that one?
Yeah, so Tikal is this amazing place in Guatemala that is a bunch of ruins from Mayan. Can't remember if it's Aztec or Mayan. I think it's one or the other, but I think Mayan. It kind of changed owners through the course of history, but it's a beautiful place. They've only uncovered like maybe 20-30% of this whole like huge civilization that used to be out there, and I had gone in to Tikal. I stayed the night, and in the morning, before the sun had rose, this guide, who he was Mayan, he had grown up in Tikal, and when they were 16, the government had kicked them all out, and which is like pretty unfortunate. But they like there was a not too long ago there was a bunch of people who were like actually living there. But he had known the park really well, and he brought me and a couple of my friends to this temple that year. It's kind of like closed off to the park. It's not like something that you just like have on the map or whatever. He just knew this like kind of secret path, and we come up to this temple, and the moon. There's this big bright moon right above the temple, and we walk up to it, and he kind of like says a prayer and asks for our permission to be able to go up on top of it. And me and my friends climb these steps all the way up to the top and watch sunrise from above the canopy in the jungle. And it was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. And I had my computer with me, and we had gone back to our place and got lunch, whatever, and then went back to the park. But I had brought my computer this time, and we found, I have like 2 or 3 hours on battery, and so we found this like other, space that there wasn't really anyone in, and we were on another temple, and I just put my headphones on and just had a bunch of stuff downloaded, and just kind of, I found that sitar loop, and it's just it was the vibe, of where I was. It was that mood, and so I put Tikal together in those. I started it in those 3 hours and I went until my computer like died. But then came back to it later on and had finished it up. But it was actually written on a temple in Tikal.
That's amazing. And so you were able to get like the core of the idea out in that session on battery power. Yeah. Great story too. And like visual, like I can almost, I'm mentally painting a picture of the scene, because you did a good job describing it. So that's a really interesting place to create a track.
It's incredible.
And do you feel like you were inspired by the temple itself or by the culture in that track? Did that come through? Of course.
I mean, it's not, obviously sitar is not a Mayan instrument. It's Indian, but it's being there, and I like to call my music temple bass. Like it's this, like, it's like it's supposed to be, or for me, it's a spiritual process, and I'm kind of putting that prayer into it, putting my prayer into it, and sitting on top of, takes just like sacred ancient site. It's just what came through, like I said, sitting at these pianos or wherever I am in the world, I'm always affected by the energy of a space and the feeling I get from different spaces and different collaborators or different instruments, or I'm always like tuning into that, like what wants to come through in this moment.
So when you're working on the bass and mixing it, whether, I don't know if this is in the creative process, the mixing process, or the mastering, but like when you are, shaping those low frequencies and making sure that it really punches through and is clear enough to like, vibrate through. Because I think that over time you realize that like the low frequencies need to actually be pretty simple. Like it can't be too many, basses going on. They're just going to be fighting and mushing up everything. It needs to be clear to punch through. So I'm curious if you have any strategies or tips or tricks that you've learned over the years when creating your low frequencies.
So a shout out to Ahi. He is an amazing producer, has some great videos on YouTube. He does this video on Span, which is a plugin, and he goes over, he plays a bunch of different tracks and kind of shows you it's a spectrum analyzer, so it'll show you where everything sits the frequency and the gain. And span is especially when you don't have a sub, because I feel like having a sub is, being able to listen on a system with a sub is kind of like for making dance music that's meant to be played on like functions or a Hennessy system. It's like you need a sub, but span,
otherwise you're just guessing.
But span is a great way to see where everything lies. And so I'm always making sure to low cut anything that's not in the low end, so kick or sub. So if the song's in like F, which is a really good tone for the sub, that's like 4.5 hertz or something like that. I'll cut above the like couple harmonics up. I'll kind of cut everything, and I'll listen to what's actually being cut out, because if that information is necessary, then I'll just do a multi-band compressor and just compress the like low mids, and then that cleans up the low end. It cleans up for the sub and the kick, and then sidechain. I use FabFilter Pro C2 because you can do look ahead and side chaining the kick, and you can do a nice frequency cut to pick what part of the kick you want, what frequency of the kick you want to trigger the side chain. And I find I can get really nice side chains there. Or if I want it to be like a volume automation, I'll use Gatekeeper. But basically side chain the kick in the low end, and then almost everything else in the song too, just so that when the kick happens, it's kind of the only thing happening. And except for like my effects and my vocals, I like those to just sit really nicely on top of everything.
So those are not sidechained.
It depends. Like if I want the vocal to do that, to have this a sidechain effect where it goes like and it's kind of pumping, this kind of sound is achieved through a sidechain. But a lot of times I like if there's like a vocalist on the song, no way. Like I want that to be the most forward thing. Looking at span just to make sure that there's usually you'll be a peak for the low end, and then there'll be like a dip. If you can get a nice dip where the low end is before the rest of the frequencies start, you'll relieve a lot of the like muddiness. People talk about muddiness. We'll clean up all of that. Those are kind of
that's great.
My techniques, and then I'll do like a really clean sine wave for the lowest harmonic, and then each harmonic above that I'll kind of like add like a fifth or an octave, or these different harmonics that then add. So like if you're listening on like smaller speakers, you'll hear the low end.
So it's kind of a way of bringing that pure sine wave kind of for or up the frequency spectrum, so that way it is still audible,
like headphones,
no matter
like
what you're listening on. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And I appreciate you mentioning the span plugin, and that's just a frequency analyzer?
Yeah, just a spectrum analyzer, yeah.
Spectrum analyzer, yeah. Cool. Well, there's one other track, to Illuminati.
Beat the technique.
Which has definitely got a pretty unique name, and I see it brings a smile to your face as well. Yeah. So I'm curious, that one, was it created in Tulum?
It was, yeah. I wanted to see what Tulum was all about down there of like a vacation. And there's an energy down there, like they play a lot of house music, and there's like a group of people who call themselves Tuluminatis. It's like I don't know, it's like a vibe. It's like Burning Man meets like crypto meets like I don't know, like the Bay Area. I don't know how to really explain it, but it's just like an interesting energy down there, and Illuminati was this like, I don't know, for me it was this play on like the energy down there. And I had written that while I was in Tulum, and I actually sent that song because I couldn't figure out how to finish it. I feel like it was like, I don't know what to do with the end of the song. I sent it to my buddy, the Rat Hatter, and he did the like second half. So the first half of the song I had started and created, and he did the second half. And so that's kind of where that song comes from. And it's got that like vocal line. It's like, I don't know, like I want to say Vogue, like like housey dancer. I don't know how to explain it, but it's got that vocal like really poppy, catchy vocal melody that kind of inspired it, and then the bass drop. And yeah, I wrote it in Tulum and called it Illuminati because I thought it was kind of a funny. I thought it was a funny saying, a funny word that people were calling themselves in Tulum.
Yeah, no, that is funny. And I've never been there, so I'm just getting this perspective from the pictures and the songs that come out of there. So interesting take on it, to Illuminati. But I am curious though, when do you know a song is done, and or like when do you know that you need to ask somebody for assistance or a new idea, like you just mentioned? That second half of the song was kind of missing.
Gosh.
How do you know when a track that you're working on is done and
I think that's
or needs extra help?
I think that's a trick question. I think there's an answer to that, really.
It is.
Honestly. It is. I'll be real with you. Like, there's so for that. One of my favorite musicians of all time, his name's Jacob Collier. Super awesome guy too. Like, I went to see his show in Portland, and afterwards he comes out and says hi to everyone, and I got to say hi to him and ask him a couple questions. And one of the questions I asked, how the heck do you finish your songs? Because I'll see on his YouTube or whatever he shares, he has like hundreds of vocal tracks, and like his projects are massive, and how do you know when this song's done? He's like, honestly, you'll never finish a song. A song will never be done, ever. Actually, like it's possible to continue to work on a song for all of eternity. And I think what kind of starts to happen is your style changes and it gets kind of stale and whatever. You'll like move on. But the only way to finish a song that I know is possible is to set deadlines. And so for me, it's and then, so I'll set a deadline. I'll like set a, like I want this done by the date, but then I will play it out. I'll play it live. So I'll mix and master it and then play it in my sets, and I'll hear how it sounds, and I'll gauge the reaction of people, and play it a couple times, and kind of like the process of like removing yourself from the creative process a little bit, like okay, the song is kind of like done and I'm just like kind of playing it. And then when I come back to it, I always hear new little pieces here and there that I want to add to it. And then even up until the final moment, I mix it, I master it, I put it out for distribution. Like, it's still not done. Like, I'm still hearing stuff. I'm like, should I change that? Should I do this? At some point, you just have to release it. You're like, no, it's done. I'm releasing it. It's gone. It's not mine anymore. It's like out there in the world, in the ethers. And I think it's important to recognize that, because even after I finish a song, like, I will still go back and rework it for live sets. Like, it's done.
Yeah. And then once you rework it for that live set, is that the new standard version for that track, or do you always go back to the released version?
Just for sets.
I don't know if that question makes sense.
Once it's released, it's released. It's out there. Like, I won't. Yeah. I don't feel like it's necessary to like touch stuff that I've released. Like, I'll go back and I'll listen to some of my favorite artists, and I'll listen to their old albums. I'm like, oh, actually, this is inspiring because reminds me of where I'm at, or where I was, or, whatever. Like, it's like not as high quality as the stuff that they put out, now, or, whatever. So,
So you see that progression, and the other artist kind of gives you reassurance that there is a progression, and you need to release it. Otherwise, there is no progression at all.
Exactly.
You never started.
And it gives you like a really, I think especially for starting artists or people who are like, I don't know, releasing blah, blah, blah. Like if you don't release stuff, you'll never get like it's like a snapshot of where you were at a certain time. And if you don't get it out there, it'll get stale. And then you'll have all of these old projects that like haunt you and you'll never release anything. So it's like really important setting deadlines and just being like, okay, this is it. I'm done. This is going out. Like I'm going to put it out there. Like super important to the,
and you don't negotiate with yourself saying, well, this deadline, I'll just, push back a little bit.
I mean, maybe sometimes, but this
You're
year,
pretty disciplined.
This year, I've been on it. I've released a song for every month this year, and I plan to continue to do that. So I just recently...
Oh, that's great.
I just recently sent off another song for distribution. Yeah, which is actually... I'd love to talk about it.
Yeah, let's share it.
What it means to me. It's called Umoja. But umoja is the Swahili word for unity, which means to strive for, in Swahili means striving and maintaining for unity in family, community, nation, race. And it's this song that incorporates Mongolian throat singing and Senegalese vocals with like a trap bass. And it makes this really fun, high song. But I called it umoja and use that word unity because a lot of what I'm doing is like blending like different cultures and like different music from all around the world. And for me, it's like, I'll never understand what it means to be a person of color, but I can definitely empathize with the people who have lived under marginalization and oppression due to their race or the skin tone. But like, and I want to recognize that, I take from these cultures and from people all around the world to create the music that I create. And it's this blend of, different instruments from China and India and different vocals and samples from like Africa and, all around the world. And it's so beautiful. And like to have a world where we can do this, where these sounds are all across the internet and all over, and I can like use that and take that. But like, there's no music that hasn't been influenced by a person of color, like blues and jazz and hip hop, and like these are all really fundamental to like a lot of what I do. Especially like I use a lot of like hip hop rhythms and a lot of trappy, bassy sounding grooves and this song is this like umoja unity. It's like, I believe that, we're able to unify, across borders, across race, and like as a white musician, I just want to express my gratitude, my immense gratitude for the people that have come before me, in particular people of color who have made music what it is today. And I think it's important to like recognize, not only like my privilege to be able to do that, but to not like squander that. Like I use, my undeniable privilege to make the world a better place for everyone around me, regardless of race or nationality. And every day I'm looking to see how I can be better for everyone around me and how I can serve the planet more. And like, yeah, it's actually some friends of mine, High Step Society, at the end of every one of their sets, they, because they like electro jazz, and they're always, kind of giving gratitude for people of color in particular of influence their music. And I just, I love that. And I would encourage anyone who's, particular white musicians to, recognize and give gratitude. And so.
Well, that's great. And I certainly appreciate you expressing that. And I certainly resonate and agree with you that music has the power to cross borders, cultures, languages, and time, which is very interesting. And then just briefly, while I mentioned time, I feel like we live currently in such an age that there's been an explosion of recorded music. Yeah. Now, music has been passed down verbally, or written, but we don't know what Beethoven sounded like on, a violin. We have no idea. But yet he was able to convey the music lasts. Yeah. But only in the last 100 years or so have we been able to capture individuals' sound, other than in written form. Yeah. And I feel like the explosion of recorded music going from basically zero to, who knows, infinity. It's mind-boggling to think. Yeah. And I also wanted to offer one other thing. You mentioned that you're taking all these sounds from various cultures, but I would also argue that you're also giving it new life and giving it in a new perspective. So that same sample is reworked and is given, in a way, a new opportunity to be heard and to be expressed, and it's translated through your ear and your experiences. But it certainly, I see music, and you can't own a chord, so everybody's got the same notes to work with. There's so much overlap between everybody, but there's so many ideas that have been foundational to the progression of various sounds. So I appreciate you expressing that. Yeah,
it's beautiful. I love it. I mean, who would have thought, in this track I'm using Mongolian but singing African vocals, and it's just it's so powerful, it's so I love this tribal feel to music. It's really gets you into your body and your spirit, and I just I have so much gratitude for all of these musicians around the world who provide those samples and who have shaped music, the music that it is that we are into here today. I always like this term, standing on the shoulders of giants. I had a background in science and went to college for science and do environmental stuff, doing mapping, web mapping, but journals in science are built upon research that has already been done, studies that have been done, and then you're building upon the body of science. And I feel like music kind of is a way where there's a vocabulary, there's a musical vocabulary, there's a whole language, and learning how musicians use language to have their own vocabulary, and then picking and pulling from these different realms of music, like jazz and blues and hip hop and rock and roll, whatever it is. There's these foundational sentences or sayings, or I don't know how, melodies or phrases, and so I think that's it's what music's about, is taking what's already there and building upon it. And so I love genre bending, and I love blending and putting things together in a way that you might have never heard before, but super fun, super amazing, super cool that we live.
It also seems to be like alchemy when you're creating a brand new track, because it starts out nothing. Yeah. And of course, as you mentioned, you're building on top of giants, but same with the computer itself, all the Alan Turing and all the Claude Shannon and everybody who made the computers work and enables us to record and process and do all these synthesized sounds is has ultimately shaped music, even though they maybe had no intention of working on music. So it's really profound what we're able to leverage today to create stuff.
Really is.
So outside of music, what are you into? What lights you up? What are you passionate about?
That's a great question. Well, I mentioned dancing earlier. I love dancing. It's just like something about partner dancing, and it's so fun. Any
particular styles or cultures?
Honestly, I'm kind of like a contact fusion dancer, so I know a little bit of like steps and different kinds of partner dances, but I'm a lot more of a free form fusion kind of dancer where I bring together all sorts of styles in one, and that's mostly my jam. I've just learned from all the people I've danced with, like over the years, and just have my own kind of style, which is what's so beautiful about dance. It's like, you can just dance, you can just move your body. So
that's great.
I also love going outside, backpacking, national parks. I got a permit for Yosemite to go backpack down the John Muir Trail during the Perseids meteor shower, which I can't even wait for.
Wow.
I think that'll be an incredible experience. But backpacking, getting outside, visiting national parks, traveling, seeing nature, being in nature. I think that's probably my number one biggest thing that I love to do. And community. I think community is my other most favorite thing to be involved in. I just love being with people, and sharing with people, like creating together, co-creating together, and keeping community alive. So I love being a part of that.
That's great. Well, for people listening that don't already know your music, what are the best links and social networks to connect with you on?
Yeah, I mean, I put the most effort into my Spotify. So you can find me on Spotify. Just search Akriza, Akriza. I'm everywhere. I'm on Bandcamp. That's where my music goes up if you want to purchase it and support me. I'm also on SoundCloud. And then I have my website, akriza.com. And then I'm most active on Instagram. So that's where, if you want to DM me or reach out, follow me and follow my more personal journey. I like to post on my story and my feed quite often, and love to be active there. So you can find me there and follow me there and reach out and say, hey, what up?
Perfect. Well, last questions for you, totally open-ended. Is there anything else that you'd like to share that we didn't get to today?
I do plan to eventually come out with an end-to-end music production course. I think that'll be it's something I'm slowly working on. So I think that I love process, and I love the creative process, and I want to share that with people. So I think eventually I hope to do something like that. And I offer mastering to anybody who needs mastering. So
nice. So if somebody needs mastering out there, DM you on Instagram. Is that the best place?
Send me an email. I'd be happy to help. And sometimes I'll do lessons too, so keep an eye out for that, or ask me if you want to reach out and do something together. So those are some things that I offer and want to be offering in the future. So
excellent. Well, Zachary, thank you so much for your time today, for your music in general, putting yourself out there and sharing some of the intricacies behind the music, some of the inspiration, the wild stories, being on top of the temple while mixing. It's beautiful. And I appreciate your time today. And thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This has been an awesome conversation, and I'm looking forward to to many more songs and shows and continuing to create. And yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
Listening to the Freio Music Podcast with Michael Morahan. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single episode. And don't forget to share this podcast everywhere. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay tuned.
Freio Music, Freio Music, Freio Music, Freio Music. You are listening to Freio Music.